وليه كل ده بيحصل؟
لازم تواجهه.
رفعت!
امشي في اتجاه خوفك يا رفعت.
At the outset of the second episode, the city's weather has taken on an unusual and erratic pattern. Meteorologists attribute this to the condensation of dust and smoke, and they predict that the burning of agricultural waste which is contributing to these conditions will likely cease soon. Refaat's phone rings, which he promptly disconnects. However, he hears someone calling his name and catches sight of Shiraz. He has a suspicion that his own mind might be playing tricks on him, so he decides to play along. Meanwhile, one of Ueda's students asks her if is it true that the sun will never rise again, to which she asks him not to worry, it will come tomorrow. She then sees Shiraz standing outside the door. Later, Refaat is officially summoned by the authorities. They tell them they have gathered here today specifically because an official decree appointed them to perform an autopsy on a recently discovered mummy. The autopsy will be performed in absolute secrecy. No reports to the media will be allowed under any circumstances. Prior to the autopsy, Ramsey warns the authorities that they should not perform an autopsy on the mummy, as touching the Black Pharaoh's body could result in death. Unfortunately, his warnings go unheeded, and they have him forcibly removed from the premises. Finally, a team readies for the autopsy, and Refaat arrives in a highly protective suit. As the doctors prepare, one of them attempts to light his cigarette, but his lighter fails to work. Meanwhile, another doctor makes an incision in the mummy's stomach, and to their shock, a multitude of insects emerges and scatters throughout the room. Later, Refaat arrives at Refaat's house, where she becomes angry with him for bringing the foreign girl into her home. He explains that he extended the invitation out of courtesy but did not anticipate that she would actually agree to visit. Refaat tells him that she told Ueda that he is taking her to the movies tonight. Later that evening, Refaat goes to watch a movie with Ueda, but he is tormented by thoughts about their relationship. He wonders whether it's worse to break her heart now or let her spend her life with someone like him. As he contemplates these thoughts, he prepares to light a cigarette. However, he suddenly realizes that someone is sitting in the back seat. Ueda stops him from smoking, mentioning that she needs a husband who isn't always coughing. She also reveals that she saw the ghost everyone had been discussing. Refaat says they talked about it too much that she imagined. Later, when Ueda returns to her house, the light bulb in the hallway suddenly switches off on its own. She is then startled by a terrifying voice emanating from the darkness. To make matters worse, she spots someone in the hallway, which terrifies her, prompting her to flee in fear. Meanwhile, Ramsey approaches Refaat, revealing the grim news that everyone in the autopsy room today has died. He informs his senior that Refaat is alive and he is with him. He then tells Refaat that he is the only survivor and asks for his assistance to save the country before it's too late. Ramsey believes that the recent events are a result of the curse of the Pharaoh. He implores Refaat to help him bury the Black Pharaoh, suggesting that once this is done, everyone can find rest, including the restless spirit known as the Mutt, which seeks revenge in the world of the living. The Mutt and the Pharaoh are on the loose, and they must be returned to their bodies. Refaat, however, informs Ramsey that he has something to attend to tonight and asks him to leave, assuring him that they are already working on the situation. Just as Ramsey leaves, Refaat hears some sound from inside his house. As Ueda attempts to escape from the pursuing entity, it becomes a chase. Meanwhile, Refaat calls Ramsey back to his house, and they are both shocked to discover the word death written on one of the walls. Ramsey tells him that this mummy belongs to Neferkare VII, or Black Pharaoh. He usurped the throne from his much-beloved brother. He killed him, braced his legacy, and married his lover Khashira, who never stopped mourning him. Ramsey tells Refaat that the Pharaoh knew how hated he was. That is why he threatened anyone who disgraces his grave with a curse. There was a papyrus that said, "My curse shall befall whoever goes against my will. It shall come to them when they are alone, with no lover." This Pharaoh is dead set on killing anyone who disobeys his rules. He hunts his victims down when they are alone, so that no one can come to their rescue. Refaat asks him what does he need from him, and how he is supposed to deal with the Pharaoh. Ramsey suggests that they must bury the Pharaoh together to prevent further darkness and the impending plague or calamity. Meanwhile, Ueda manages to find her way to Refaat's building. As she ascends the staircase, she suddenly pauses, sensing that someone is following her. She attempts to look down, but someone abruptly covers her eyes, even though there appears to be no one there. This encounter terrifies her, and then she hears the sound of someone weeping. She discovers Shura sitting outside Refaat's apartment door, and suddenly an entity haunts her. Ramsey retrieves a device from his bag and explains to Refaat that it will offer them protection from the Pharaoh. He says it as a sistrum, a tool imbued with the protection of Hathor and the Eye of Horus. However, their conversation is abruptly interrupted by Ueda's piercing scream, and they discover her unconscious on the stairs. Ramsey says that the Pharaoh's vengeful spirit is taking its revenge, and this is how the doctors met their end, and if they don't act swiftly, Ueda too will die. Ueda is then admitted to the hospital, where Ramsey calls for Refaat's attention, and they both observe a sudden influx of patients at the hospital, and Ramsey grimly states that the epidemic is spreading. Refaat then contacts Maggie and informs her about Ueda's condition in the hospital, stressing that she is in a very unstable state. He expresses his urgent need for her assistance and support. Maggie consults with the doctor and subsequently informs Refaat that Ueda's case is indeed quite unusual, but it is not connected to the ongoing outbreak. Ramsey interjects, suggesting that what happened to Ueda mirrors the fate of the doctors in the autopsy room, but they were able to rescue her using the sistrum. Refaat checks Ueda's purse and finds his cigarette packet in it, and Maggie says maybe this explains what happened to Ueda. Ramsey explains that this is Scarab. It guides the Pharaoh's angered soul to those who desecrated his mummy. Refaat asks, and that baby rattle of his will stop at all. Ramsey says this sistrum saved Ueda, and he saw it himself, but he cannot save anyone here right now. Maggie says they have to go to the lab and analyze the insect first. Ramsey says they don't have time, but he has an idea, and he just needs Refaat to help him. Refaat is the only one with access to the autopsy room. The doctors who were there fell ill, just like Ueda's fiancé, but they didn't survive. However, Refaat did, possibly because she saved him. Refaat makes preparations to go to the autopsy room, providing the guard with some money and requesting cigarettes and food. As the guard departs to fulfill the request, Ramsey rushes to Refaat, emphasizing the limited time they have. They enter the autopsy room and commence their mission to remove the Pharaoh's mummy. However, Shiraz's spirit intervenes, blocking their path and sealing the door, while the guards approach. In a desperate bid to escape, Refaat and Ramsey navigate an alternative route, eventually exiting the building where Maggie is already waiting for them. As they leave, an eerie entity lingers at the building's entrance, hiding the suspense. During their journey, Ramsey informs the group that they must bury the Pharaoh tonight in his home. Refaat corrects him, stating that it's not the Black Pharaoh but his limping brother. He theorizes that if this is the limping prince and the woman is his beloved who married his brother, then the spell on the coal bottle represents the curse the Black Pharaoh cast on his brother to bury his history. The spell of the queen may hold the key to their salvation. Ramsey questions what about the Pharaoh's angered soul, to which Refaat admits he doesn't fully understand, but it's clear that there is a curse at play. This curse prevents the reunion of the prince and the queen. He instructs Maggie to turn around as they need to make their way to the temple. As they arrive at the temple, Ramsey explains that Queen Kashira is interred in a chamber within a black granite coffin. Unbeknownst to them, the eerie entity continues to shadow their movements. Meanwhile, Ueda's health deteriorates, and doctors work to revive her. Inside the temple, Ramsey becomes disoriented, unsure of the location of Kashira's tomb. So Refaat proposes that the three of them should split up and search for it. After an extended search, Refaat eventually locates Kashira's mummy and beckons the others to join him. As he positions the mummy next to Kashira's, the eerie entity begins advancing toward him. However, as the two mummies are united, the entity vanishes. Ramsey and Maggie observe this sequence of events, leaving them somewhat startled. When Refaat notices their unease, he asks them if they've seen a ghost. Meanwhile, Ueda, who was on the brink of death, miraculously regains her heartbeat, and finally the weather of their city also becomes clear. Upon their return to the hospital, the doctor informs them that Ueda is stable but still in the process of recovery. Refaat inquires about the next steps to aid in her recuperation. Ramsey explains that she requires the Amenhotep antidote, which can be found in a yellow flower called Silphium, growing in the far west. Refaat expresses his frustration, having followed spells, papyrus, and the sistrum, yet still feeling unable to save her. Later, Maggie tells him that the sun has risen, and no new cases. She questions if they truly saved the world from a mummy's curse, to which Refaat responds that he could have never imagined such a scenario even in his wildest dreams. He then tells her that 15 years ago, he had purchased a ring with the intention of proposing to someone. However, someone else came into her life and married her instead, causing him to abandon his plans. Refaat acknowledges that this time, he doesn't think he can give up. He then goes to Ueda and apologizes to her, saying he did all he could. He did things he never imagined himself doing. He says get well soon and they will get married, and he will do whatever she wants. And outside, Shiraz watches over him, adding a mysterious element to the scene. Thanks for joining us on our horror movie recap adventure. If you enjoyed the chills, Subscribing would mean a lot. Drop a comment to share your thoughts and keep the terror alive. Stay spooky and see you soon.